Okay guys, this week we're going to be talking about genetic disorders. So we're going to be talking about what are the two major causes of disorders, how do geneticists trace the inheritance of these traits, and then how are genetic disorders diagnosed and how are they treated. Terms we're going to go over: genetic disorder, a karyotype. This is actually, you guys are looking at an example of a karyotype right now. This right here, and you can't see that because that's in black, but that's an example of a karyotype. It's a picture of what your chromosomes look like. So this is a karyotype, and then you already know about what a pedigree chart is. Okay. Objective 56. I can describe the causes of genetic disorders. So genetic disorders are abnormal conditions that a person inherits through genes or chromosomes. That's the key word that we're talking about right there, that they inherit that. It's nothing that they did wrong. It is nothing that they caught. It is not contagious. They cannot pass it on except through their genes. So they got it from their genes, and they could possibly pass it on through their genes to their children, but it's not something you can catch. Okay? Some genetic disorders are caused by mutations in the DNA of the genes. Remember when I was talking to you guys about what DNA looked like and I was showing you the code? And remember I said, hey, this code is for a certain gene and this code is for a certain gene? And what this is showing you right now with the mutations where it says the G and the A and the T and the G are switched. Remember I told you G always pairs with C and T always pairs with A. So in this example, because G is paired with A and T is paired with G, that is a mutation. So there is going to be something wrong. Okay? Other times, genetic disorders are caused by changes in the overall structure or number of chromosomes. So Down syndrome is a good example. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. Okay, moving on. So one that we're going to be talking about in class, if we haven't already talked about it, is cystic fibrosis. Again, this is a genetic disorder. It is not something you can catch. It's something that a person is born with. And cystic fibrosis is caused by a recessive trait, which means both mom and dad have to pass it down. And when we do that case study, you will see that both mom and dad pass down the trait, the recessive trait for the child to get cystic fibrosis. What cystic fibrosis is it's a problem with the lungs. The body produces thick mucus in the lungs and also in the intestines. And then the thick mucus fills the lungs, making it hard to breathe. And because it's so thick, it doesn't break up. Like when you have a bad cold, and you can hear that mucus start to break up and move out of your lungs. That doesn't happen with people who have cystic fibrosis. That mucus stays there, and it's really hard to break up, which makes it hard for them to breathe. Okay? So the genetic disorder itself is the allele. Remember, you know what an allele is. It's either dominant or recessive, and in this case it's recessive, on one chromosome that is a result of the mutation in which 3 base pairs are removed from a DNA molecule. So remember I told you that a gene is a code. So in this case for cystic fibrosis, in the code it's missing the last 3 pairs of the code, and so they don't have the instructions, the body doesn't have the instructions to make the mucus correctly because 3 base pairs are removed from that code. Alright, next is sickle cell disease. Sickle cell disease affects hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is in your red blood cells, and it's what oxygen attaches to in your red blood cells so that your blood cells can bring oxygen to the rest of your body. So what happens in sickle cell anemia is that instead of your regular red blood cells being nice and round like these are here, they end up having these sickle shapes, not shakes. A sickle, think of like the Grim Reaper. He has his long staff with that thing at the end. This part right here is the sickle, and that is the shape that you're seeing of the red blood cell, and that's why it's called sickle cell disease. It is dangerous because it can clog the blood vessels. It can't carry as much oxygen to the body. So people who have sickle cell have a lot of pain and live with pain. The allele is co-dominant with the normal allele. Remember we talked about co-dominance with blood type. Okay, so that means they're going to have regular cells and some cells that are sickle cell shaped. Okay, a person with two sickle shaped alleles will have the disease. Okay, one allele and the person will both produce normal and sickle cells. So that means if the person is heterozygous, meaning because sickle cell anemia is co-dominant, if your regular blood cell is I, maybe say A, and then you have the sickle cell, we'll just do it like that for an S, they're going to have normal blood cells and sickle-shaped ones. Oops, that is not the eraser. Just like in this picture right here, they will end up with both. Someone who has both sickle cell, capital S, are all of their blood cells are going to look like that. Okay? Moving on. Hemophilia. I think we talked about this one in our other video notes when we were talking about sex-linked traits. Hemophilia is a genetic disorder in which a person's blood does not clot at all, or it clots very slowly. So they just continue to bleed. They're missing one of the proteins needed for normal blood clotting. That sticky stuff, the platelets that are in your blood that cause blood to clot. There's a problem there. And people who have hemophilia, it's very dangerous for them because small bumps and bruises can cause internal bleeding that can't be controlled. So it's very dangerous. Again, it's caused by a recessive allele on the X chromosome. And it's going to occur more frequently in male because it is sex-linked. It's carried on the X. So if a female, if mom passes down the trait, and you have a female, remember mom's passing down an X, dad is passing down an X. If the chromosome, if mom passes down the trait to her daughter, and it's right there, and then dad doesn't have it, that's a recessive. This would be a dominant. She's going to get the dominant. So she would be a carrier of hemophilia, but she wouldn't have it. But if it is a male where it is passed down, remember mom passes down an X, dad passes down a Y. So if hemophilia is located on this X chromosome right there, it is going to show up. Remember, there's no match for that X chromosome, okay, because a boy is an XY. That's why it shows up in boys more often than girls. Can a girl get it? Yes, a girl can, because if mom and dad both pass down that recessive trait, then a girl can end up with hemophilia. It's just more common in boys because they do not have a match to that X. Okay, Down syndrome. I talked about Down syndrome a little bit before, and this karyotype is showing this person's genes. And you can see here's chromosome 1, chromosome 2, and it goes all the way up. And then right here at chromosome 21, you see 3 copies of chromosome 21. So having 3 copies of that chromosome 21 creates Down syndrome, okay? Most often it occurs when the chromosomes fail to separate during meiosis. Okay, so during meiosis, when they make copies, and then remember you start with 46 and you go to 92, and then you have 2 daughter cells each with 46, and then those split right at that second division during meiosis. That chromosome number 21 does not split in half, so one of the egg cells or the sperm cells, depending on which one it is, gets 24 chromosomes and the other one gets 22, and there's an extra copy of 21. Okay? Down syndrome causes some degree of mental retardation, and also heart defects are common, but can be treated. Pedigrees you know all about, and we have been using those, so you know how we can use them to trace inheritance patterns back through our different generations. And then managing genetic disorders. Doctors used to only have Punnett squares, and you know what those are, and pedigrees, and you know what those are, to help predict the genetic disorders. But now we have the karyotypes, which is the picture that I showed you before, the picture of all the chromosomes. People with genetic disorders can be helped through medical care, education, job training, and other methods. But it's not going to ever go away. A genetic disorder is not going to go away. Scientists have been working on gene therapy, where they think that in the future they're going to be able to replace the code or the gene that has the problem, or the chromosome with the problem, with a healthy chromosome that does not have the problem, and then the disorder would go away if they were able to replace or fix that genetic code in a person's body. Because remember, if they can figure out how to do that, and it's not going to work with everything, because remember, your nerve cells you have the same ones that you were born with. And so not all cells in your body replace themselves. But if it's something like cystic fibrosis and they can fix the problem in the DNA, then that genetic disorder would be able to go away if they could fix it with gene therapy. And there are some other disorders that they're looking into that in the future it would be possible for that genetic disorder to be treated and go away 100%. But for the most part, and right now, where we are right now in 2015, there's no cure for a genetic disorder. People treat their genetic disorders through medicine and medical care and education and how to deal with it, and some other methods. Again, a karyotype is the picture of all the chromosomes in a cell. They're arranged in pairs. Remember, 23 pairs, 46 total. And they can reveal whether a person has the correct number of chromosomes, especially on that chromosome number 21, because sometimes there's 3 copies there. That creates Down syndrome. Genetic counseling. If you have a genetic disorder that runs in your family, you might want to go through genetic counseling. And again, we're going to talk about that with that cystic fibrosis case study that we're going to be doing in class. A couple with a family history of genetic disorder can go to a genetic counselor for advice. The genetic counselor is going to look at their family. They're going to use Punnett squares. They're going to use a pedigree chart to determine what is the risk of these two people, and what are their chances of having a child with a genetic disorder that may or may not, that may run in their family. And then, of course, people who have genetic disorders, they have to deal with them. Again, medical treatments. Physical therapy helps remove mucus from the lungs of people with cystic fibrosis. Folic acid helps people with sickle cell disease to make more red blood cells. And then education and job training helps people with Down syndrome find work and try to live the best life that is possible for them. And that is it for this week. That is Objective 56. And if you have any questions at all, please bring them to class.